Hello, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to Calls. This is the 2024 Sentry Tournament of Champions initial research show. We have reached the beginning of the PGA Tour season. I am quite excited as the new look PGA Tour is about to kick off this week in its customary opening location in Hawaii at Kapalua for the first signature event of 2024, the first event overall for the PGA Tour season. We are here for all of your initial thoughts and to get a quick look at some of the players you might want to focus on in the wager market and to get an idea on where you think you might want to go for DFS. So got quite a fun show for you all. Hopefully the idiots around me aren't too loud. But I'm looking forward to it. So let's get right into it. All statistics provided tonight and every night are from fantasynational.com. It is the best tool out there for your golf wagers and golf DFS. It's going to make you a much smarter wagerer, and a much better DFS player. Go check out fantasynational.com. You won't regret it. In the description to the video, there are links to all of the social media. First off, my X and Instagram, all of that good stuff is where I post research every week on the PGA Tour. That'll be no different. That comes out tomorrow for the Sentry Tournament of Champions this week. I've been in front of the computer all day today looking at some patterns, some Kapalua information, trying to dig into the details in preparation for that research. I think I have some pretty good stuff for you all. So if you want to see the weekly research that I do on the PGA Tour, give me a follow at your preferred social media site, X or Instagram. X is also where I post my weekly betting cards on the PGA Tour and my player exposure to the DFS contests that I play. So if you want to see that information as well, give me a follow over at X. And then speaking of X, Gabe's handle is in the description. He writes a very good article called The Fringe. It's a very good way to start your week of preparation, your week of research, and then he continues it on throughout the week with his own form of player history, course analysis, and all that stuff. So go show Gabe some support. Follow him over on X, because if you do, you're going to be able to join us every week on Wednesday evening in his Substack chat as we continue the DFS talk over there after calls. So go show Gabe some support. Subscribe to that article. It is free to do so, by the way. And then lastly, we are live. Chat is open. Want to hear from you all, the viewers. First off, do you have any big New Year plans? Clearly I do. As you can see, I am right here spending a little bit of time with you all, looking at some golf metrics, getting my nerd on, if you will. But what kind of New Year's plans do you all have? Have you looked at the field for the Sentry Tournament of Champions this week? Pretty unique in the sense that this is going to be the biggest Sentry Tournament of Champions field that has ever been seen. Normally there's about 40, give or take, players at Kapalua. This week we have close to 70. So interested to hear from you all in that regard. Have you looked at the field? If you do, or if you have, who are some of your top players heading into your week of research? All of that good stuff. Enough rambling. Let's get into it. So let's do our initial research for the 2024 Sentry Tournament of Champions. And we're going to start, as we always do, at an initial research show with the GCSAA Tournament Fact Sheet. So not a lot has changed here. This is the customary opening tournament of the new calendar year. Now, the new PGA Tour season as it is. We are at Kapalua Resort playing the Plantation course. Let's see if I can, just off the edge of your screen there. We are at Kapalua, the Plantation course. I kept mentioning that it was the Sentry Tournament of Champions. Now it's just called the Sentry. So I might have to adjust the thumbnail and title, because this is not just the tournament for the champions of the PGA Tour like it used to be. Now it is including the top 50 from last year's PGA Tour season. So you will have quite a few new first-time players at Kapalua, and that is going to be a big part of my research for tomorrow. But for the Sentry, we are at Kapalua, the Plantation Course in Lahaina, I believe is how you say that. Kapalua is very, very, very unique in the sense that it is a par 73, measures close to 7,600 yards. Now that is one of the longest courses on the tour. This is the third longest, in fact. But it's a little bit deceiving as the front nine, the par 36 side, is fairly short, but it goes up the mountain. So it plays significantly longer than the yardage suggests, whereas the back nine, you are coming down the mountain, so holes are much longer, but does not play to the yardage listed. 7,600 yards, and the stent meter is reading at 11. That would be close to average, and when we go into the historic conditions later on this evening, you'll see that we're not going to be looking at just Velcro greens, which is customary here at Kapalua either. Some other information regarding Kapalua: it is a Bill Core and Ben Crenshaw design, was renovated in 2019. These are the biggest greens on tour, the biggest, 8,700 plus square feet on average. A whole lot of fairways, some of the widest fairways on tour as well. 44.5 acres of fairway. Not a lot of rough. These fairways are so wide that even I might be able to hit them. It's a stretch, but I might be able to hit them. A lot of bunkers, but even though this is on the Hawaiian coast in Lahaina, there is no water hazards on the course. None. So no water in play. But a couple of interesting notes as well for Kapalua. The last tournament that we saw, at least officially for the PGA Tour, was the RSM, and it had Tiff Eagle Bermuda. So we are again on Tiff Eagle Bermuda this week, and we are on Bermuda throughout the entirety of the course. On the fairways, the rough, everything is Bermuda. The only difference is the greens are Tiff Eagle, not Celebration. Just a couple of quick notes here, which I found was pretty darn interesting, and I'm hoping the GCSAA includes little snippets of information like this. Some of this is just, kind of FYI or fun little trivia, but as you can see, in 2023, longest courses, Plantation was the third longest. Torrey Pines, the longest, and then Corrales, which is a very long course in the Dominican Republic. But Kapalua is the third longest course on tour. They are the largest greens by far. El Cardinal, Tiger Woods' debut course on the PGA Tour, had some extremely large greens, but Kapalua is by far the largest. And Kapalua, thanks to Gabe's information, Gabe's note. Good morning, Drew. Thanks for jumping in chat. A little bit different in terms of your exposure to the channel. This is my main content, but thanks for jumping into chat. Happy New Year to you over there, and thanks for checking out some golf statistic and golf wagering content this evening. But also thanks to Gabe, and you will get this information if you are a subscriber to his article. Kapalua is very consistently the easiest course on the PGA Tour in relation to par. So we're going to be looking at several metrics or several filters this week around easy to par, maybe looking at some long courses, but along with that, maybe some wind, although we'll start checking the forecast tomorrow Fantasy National in with Windfinder. So again, the highlights here, nothing to do with Architect, at least in terms of Fantasy National. This is a Bill Core and Ben Crenshaw design. These are the largest greens on the PGA Tour at over 8,700 square feet. No water in play. We are on Tiff Eagle Bermuda on the greens. So with that, we're going to move on over to Fantasy National. You see that I have this set for the calendar year of 2023 and sample size of 36 rounds. We don't want to look at the entirety of the calendar year, just ideally lately. Some of these players, their 36 rounds encompasses the FedEx Fall. Some might be going all the way back into the summer, say the Memorial and all that. For example, Rory, his 36 rounds are going to go way back because he did not play any in terms of the FedEx Fall. So you see he actually goes back all the way to May and the Wells Fargo. But in a player's last 36 rounds, get a quick feel for who has played the best in those 36 rounds. Rory, Victor Hovland, Scotty Scheffler, Ludwig Aubert, the winner at the RSM, Tommy Fleetwood, Colin Morikawa, Eric Cole, Lucas Glover, Patrick Cantlay, and Russell Henley are your top 10 in terms of last 36 round performance. Again, this is normally about a 40-man size field. This year we have 60. I think I overestimated or gave you a bigger number. I think probably mentioned 70. 60 players this year. These are the champions from any full tournament in 2023, plus the top 50, if not already qualified from last year's PGA Tour standings. All right, so again, a couple of things we're going to look at very quickly. This course is just simply one of the easiest on tour. We'll get some more information around that when we go into the course breakdown. But just to start, we'll keep this on 2023. Every single player has at least 10 rounds in terms of easy scoring to par. So your top performers in rounds that are easy relative to par this past calendar year: Ludwig Aubert, Colin Morikawa, Eric Cole, Xander, Adam Hadwin, Russell Henley, Luke List, Tom Kim, Patrick Cantlay, and Victor Hovland. Let's see. Another thing we can look at is long courses. Not necessarily going to be the filter that I want to use the most, but certainly a long course, Kapalua. So on long courses, your top performers: Xander, Sungjae, Wyndham Clark, Max Homa, Ricky, Nico Echeverria, Patrick Cantlay, Tony Finau, Scotty Scheffler, and Colin Morikawa. Again, a whole lot of overlap here with a small field. The premier talent on the PGA Tour is here, so we're going to have a lot of overlap in that way. But there is a quick look at a couple of kind of big picture filters that we are going to be taking a look at this week. All right, as I mentioned, we can get some more information around Kapalua when we look at the course breakdown. So let's go ahead and do that. Jump into the course breakdown here over on Fantasy National. One of the ways that this course is easy, of course, you have 5 par 5s, which is the style of hole that majority of professionals take advantage of. So one of the ways that the Kapalua Sentry is really, really easy, we take a look at these tough holes. The toughest hole, par 4 17th. Now it says 550 yards. That's extremely long for a par 4. But again, being on the back 9, this hole is not going to play that long as it is going down the mountainside. And the toughest hole is only a 1/10 of a shot over par. In fact, you have 3 holes, the 17th, and then the first and the second are actually 2 of the more tougher holes on the course. 3 holes that are at a 1/10 of a shot over par. A fair enough amount of bogeys, just not a whole lot of birdies on those holes. But if those are your 3 toughest holes, that's not going to make for a very difficult setup. And in fact, if we go to the other end of the spectrum, you know, the easiest par 5 fifth plays to essentially 2/3 of a shot under par. You have a half a shot under par, or almost a half a shot under par, 4/10, a quarter of a shot. There are just many, many, many birdies here at Kapalua. A few eagles. Again, the par 5 fifth, 4.5% eagle rate, 2.2, 2%. So not a whole lot of eagles, just a lot of birdies around Kapalua. In fact, you can see that with the ninth, in between the 9th and 10th most difficult hole. The 8th most difficult hole is still playing under par. So in between the 8th and the 7th is where you would find par. But again, the severe weight favoring the under par, you know, couple of holes playing a half a shot, 2/3 of a shot, 4/10, a quarter. Just so many birdie opportunities around Kapalua. The strokes gained by shot type. This is a ball striking course somewhat, especially for your players that finish in the top 10. Approach is very darn important here. These greens are extremely large, so it's not enough just to hit the green. You're going to want to have quite a bit of proximity or some prowess in proximity. So iron play is going to be pretty good, as if you are having to scramble, you're going to be falling behind a lot. Pars are decent scores on a couple of these holes, but you're going to be wanting to get a whole lot of birdies. So for the top 10s, you see approach and putting. Around the green is not a factor at all, less than 2/10. Just not a factor at all. If you're having to rely around the green, things just aren't going your way seemingly. Now, for your top 5s, the putting starts to catch up with the approach a little bit. It doesn't look like that, but just again, remember to pay attention to your y-axis here. So putting and approach, and then for your winners, as to be expected, you're going to be making a lot of putts. You're going to be winning tournaments. The around the green actually does catch up to the off the tee for the winners, which is a little surprising for me to see. But facts don't, or the numbers don't lie. As you can see, off the tee right at a half of a shot, around the green just under that. So we're going to be looking at quite a bit of approach, but you see how important the putting can get, especially for the winners. So we're going to have a little bit of emphasis on Tiff Eagle Bermuda this week. We go to strokes gained by hole by par, and par 5s are the bread and butter here at the PGA Tour, and especially at Kapalua. It's the best way to gain strokes, or at least gain relative to par. So there's your top 10s, your top 5s. Again, par 5s pretty significantly outweighing the 4s and the 3s. And then for your winners, the par 4s start to catch up a little bit. But with only 3 par 3s here at Kapalua, they just don't have a lot of weight. They just don't have a lot of significance to them. Let's take a look at hole composition here in Fantasy National. Again, I was mistaken early. There are only 3 par 3s, not 5 par 5s. 3 par 3s. You've got one pretty short par 3, 150 to 175, one from 175 to 200, and then one pretty long par 3, 200 to 225, which is the very tough par 3 second. Plays to a 10th of a shot over par, plays 219. But other than that, the par 3s really don't contribute a whole lot here. You get your par and move on with them. The par 4s, you do have a drivable par 4 on the front 9. Measures 340 something. Let's see, 301. Sorry, it's on the back 9. Which the one I always remember Dustin Johnson. I believe it was the 6th, maybe, or maybe it was the 4th that he drove some ridiculous T-ball, back in the mid-teens. But you do have a drivable par 4 on the back 9. Plays to 301. but a bevy of fairly short par 4s thanks to that front 9. You have 3 par 4s from 350 to 4 from 400 to 450, and then 3 from 500 plus. So it's interesting that you don't have any par 4s, at least on the scorecard, that measure 450 to 500. It goes from 400 to 450 straight to 500 plus, and these majority of these are on the back 9. The most difficult being that 550-yard par 4, the 17th. So some very long par 4s, but a lot of short par 4s too, thanks to the front 9 and going up the mountainside. And then your par 5s, you have 2 very short par 5s, including the very easy 18th, or excuse me, the 18th easiest, or gosh dang it, the easiest hole, par 5 fifth, plays to 2/3 of a shot under par. And then the par 5 ninth as well, measures right at 550. Then you have a 550 to 600 par 5, and then the very long, but again, it's all downhill, but very long par 5 18th, 677 on the scorecard. So there's a look at the whole compositions here at Kapalua. No proximity ranges or the whole the most common approach shot length. It's the proximity chart. It's just not here. Not sure why it's not, but we don't have it. So we're just going to be looking at some generalized proximity stats tonight. Driving accuracy, as I mentioned, these are some of the widest fairways on the PGA Tour that helps contribute to the ease of the golf course. Driving accuracy 73.5% versus sub 62%. So again, these fairways are very, very wide, very, very easy to hit. Greens, you would expect this. They are the largest on tour, almost 80% green in regulation percentage here versus 65 normally. Now scrambling is right at the average across the PGA Tour. So if you are scrambling, it's going to be you're just going to be falling behind with all the birdies that are made on this course. But if your irons aren't dialed in, you can save yourself a little bit if you are a good scrambler, a good around the green player, as scrambling isn't the easiest around here. And a lot of the reason for that, as we move down to these 3 putts, is the size of these greens. So if you somehow miss these greens, which they are the largest on tour, I'd be able to miss them, but these professionals shouldn't miss them too often. You are probably going to be a pretty decent length away from the hole. 73%, or almost 1 3-putt per round here at Kapalua versus just over 55% at the average tour event. So lots of 3-putts. You would also expect this with the size of the greens. That's why putting is a pretty big factor, especially for who wins, who can avoid their 3-putts. Driving distance, as you would expect, very long course, especially on the back 9. You're getting all that rollout, all the downhill. They generally keep it fairly firm as well. So a huge spike in driving distance here versus the average tour event, 291 versus 283. And then lastly, your proximity, again, to be expected, 35.5 feet on average if you are hitting the green here versus 29 at the average PGA Tour event. That is due to the size of the greens. So there's a look at Kapalua from a scorecard and graphical view. So we're going to move our attention back over to the player page view. And again, just kind of looking at this last 36 round sample size, we'll take a look at strokes gained approach. So your top approach players, the last 36 rounds have been Scotty Scheffler, Lucas Glover, Xander, Hideki, Colin Morikawa, Russell Henley, Eric Cole, Victor Hovland, Adam Schenk, and Justin Rose. But one of the big things as I maneuver and get my note here to make sure I grab the right courses, we're going to take a little bit of time here and take a look at putting. And because we know that we are on TIFF Eagle Bermuda, thanks to the GCSA tournament fact sheet, we're going to grab the specific courses on the PGA Tour that have those, or that TIFF Eagle Bermuda greens. So Bay Hill, host of the Arnold Palmer Invitational. We have Port Royal, PGA National, the host of what used to be the Honda Championship. Some sponsor took that, and I'm not familiar or not thinking of it off the top of my head, so I'm going to say the Honda. It's not the Honda anymore, but PGA National. We have the Plantation Course at Kapalua, of course. Port Royal, which we won't get putting statistics from, but Port Royal is the host of the Bermuda Championship. So the past two golf tournaments, at least for the FedEx Fall, the RSM and the Bermuda, have been TIFF Eagle Bermuda. And then finally, the last course, Sea Island Seaside. And I'll grab Plantation, although, again, we don't get data from the Plantation course since it doesn't have shot link. It's not the main course at the RSM. But anyway, I'm going to have to back the time frame up a little bit. As you can see, we're still only in 2023. I'm going to go all the way back to 2019 just to get that full 5 years, make sure we have enough rounds for everybody here. Some players have 36. Really, only Tom Kim and Vincent Norman don't have double digits amount of rounds. It kind of is what it is. I'm not going to go back any further. So in the past 5 years, on TIFF Eagle Bermuda, on specifically TIFF Eagle Bermuda, and again, the courses that have TIFF Eagle Bermuda on the PGA Tour, Bay Hill, host of the Arnold Palmer, PGA National, the host of the Honda, or whatever it's going to be called this year. Some sponsors taking it, I don't remember off the top of my head. Port Royal, host of the Bermuda Championship. Sea Island, the host of the RSM, and of course Kapalua. Your top performers on TIFF Eagle Bermuda. We have Sam Burns, Denny McCarthy, Wyndham Clark, Harris English, Matt Fitzpatrick, Andrew Putnam, Ludwig Obear, Xander Schauffele, Eric Cole, and Chris Kirk. So there's your top 10 in the past 5 years or 36 rounds on TIFF Eagle Bermuda. And you'll notice that I'm not going to focus on any kind of speed filter. As we take a look at the historic conditions here at the Sentry, for the first time ever last year, the green speed was average every single round. Sure, you would have the occasional round year over year that would be average, but the majority of the time, as you can see, it was Velcro. It was always kept slow. Last year, they sped the greens up. And so, because of that, I'm not too terribly confident in using a green speed filter. We're only going to be looking at TIFF Eagle Bermuda. But historic conditions, it's always been easy. Always been easy, with the exception of 2020 when the wind really picked up that week. And even when the wind does pick up, it's not a guarantee to get beyond easy in terms of difficulty. But 2020 was just a horrendous year in terms of the amount of wind they had. But generally, always very, very easy. We've always been on Bermuda, and now, again, thanks to Gabe and the GCSA tournament fact sheet, we can cross-reference a lot of the PGA Tour courses with the exact green surface they have. TIFF Eagle this week. Hitting fairways, some of this might say difficult. It's only because players just don't care. They are going strictly for distance. These fairways are some of the widest on tour. This has always been a long course, over 7,400 yards. Always a par 73. But this was the most interesting thing to me doing the research this weekend, is that they sped up the greens quite a bit last year. So that's why we're not focusing solely on slow greens or on Velcro greens. We're just going to be looking at this TIFF Eagle Bermuda. Because we are talking about TIFF Eagle Bermuda, I'm actually going to skip ahead a little bit we're going to go to the putting page view here. We're just going to look at 3-putt avoidance, specifically on TIFF Eagle Bermuda, because I have the specific courses highlighted here. So your top 3-putt avoiders on TIFF Eagle Bermuda in the past 36 rounds or 5 years: Denny McCarthy, Matt Fitzpatrick, Harris English, Andrew Putnam, Chris Kirk, Brendan Todd, Sam Burns, Scotty Scheffler, Max Homa, and Rory. So a lot of overlap here, of course, with the top 10 in terms of putting. As you can see, Denny McCarthy's second in total putting, first in 3-putt avoidance. Sam Burns does fall a little bit, first overall in putting, 7th in 3-putt avoidance. But Brendan Todd rises in terms of 3-putt avoidance. Scotty Scheffler makes a pretty significant jump, goes from 23rd to 8th in terms of 3-putt avoidance. Max Homa rises into the top 10. Rory rises in the top 10 when talking about solely 3-putt avoidance. So there's a look at a couple of specific putting metrics as you move forward with your research later this evening and into tomorrow for when the odds come out and what the sports books set player wins and top 10s and whatnot, what their odds are. There's a couple of things to think about. The only other overarching metric that I'm going to take a look at tonight, on top of the fact that we did a quick look at who's very good when it's easy, who's good on long courses. Look, the par 5s are just where you make a lot of hay here. So in the past 36 rounds this calendar year, make sure I have the right time frame here. In the past 36 rounds, your top par 5 performers have been Scotty Scheffler, Wyndham Clark, Cam Davis, Sung Jae, Lee Hodges, Max Homa, Tom Kim, Eric Van Rooyen, Ricky Fowler, and Patrick Cantlay. So perhaps give these players a little bit of a boost, or maybe put an asterisk next to them when the odds come out tomorrow if you like their numbers, and of course give these players pretty considerable amount of what's the word I'm looking for, consideration when you start thinking about your DFS lineups. All right, last thing we're going to look at in terms of Fantasy National is tournament history. And debutantes is something that you're going to hear about quite a bit this week. Your Sentry debutantes, as it's pretty well known that first-time players here at the Sentry tend to struggle. Now, some of them have played really darn well, but they haven't won in a long time, if ever. At least going back to 2012, which is as far back as Fantasy National goes, a first-time player at the Sentry Tournament Champions has not won. So, first-time players can really struggle. Tony Finau, you see, tied for 31st. Max Homa tied for 25th in his first appearance out. Scotty Scheffler tied for 13th. But your top performers the past 5 years overall, specifically at Kapalua, has been Xander. And that's including a withdrawal last year. Your winner in 2019, 2 other top 5s, a top 15. He has just played extremely well at Kapalua. Collin Morikawa has played very well at Kapalua, despite the importance of putting. So there's something about these greens that he generally has liked. Of course, probably should have won last year. Kind of falls apart on the back 9 on Sunday. Allows John Rahm to catch him, but no finish outside the top 10 for Collin Morikawa. Top 5, a runner-up last year. Patrick Cantlay has been very good here. Sung Jae's been very good here as well. So those 4 kind of dominate in terms of performance in the past 5 years. One of the top strokes gained total players at Kapalua is not here, Justin Thomas, as he is played Kapalua seemingly every year, I think every year for the past 7 or 8, so this will break a pretty long streak for him. And then you see the amount of players that are new here at Kapalua. Starting with Akshay Bhatia just in alphabetical. So we've got, I would say, a good 20 or so here that are debutantes. So again, I'm not saying that they won't play well this week. They very well could. Generally speaking, debutantes at the Sentry tend to struggle. And then the other end of the spectrum, players who have not played well at the Sentry, at Kapalua for whatever reason. You see Keegan Bradley, 2 very, very poor performances, especially since there's roughly about 40 players per tournament. This year being the exception, or the start of the exception. Adams Vinson really struggled last year, 37th out of 38 players. Mackenzie Hughes has struggled here. Hideki, the past 5 years, has actually not played all that well here. He has some pretty decent performances further back, saying that 2018, 17, but in the past 5 years he has struggled. A lot of that can probably be attributed to his nagging injuries. Lucas Glover, Victor Hovland, somebody who's going to be very, very popular this week, I imagine. But in 3 tries here, he's actually not been very good. Now, he did increase his performance or get quite a bit better last year, so maybe you can take that as a positive trend if you think that's going to continue. But he has not played the Sentry well overall. Tagala was 33rd last year out of 38. Sam Burns has not played well here either. So there's a look at the players who have kind of struggled in their time at Kapalua for whatever reason. So with that, that's a good segue. We're going to go check out, we're going to go straight to the early look file as normally. I apologize for this view as I was gathering statistics. Normally on a initial research show, I like to compare the course we're at to the average on the PGA Tour. Well, I've never done that for the Sentry Tournament of Champions or the Sentry now. I've never done that for Kapalua because it's not been a full field. It's only been, I'm going to use the nice round number of 40 players. So you're going to get a whole lot of skewed data if you were going to compare that to the average full field course. Now, tomorrow in the Data Dive show, we will absolutely... Oh, shoot. I apologize. I'm going to change the view for you all. So, just again, very quickly, nothing to compare Kapalua against the average full field course here on the PGA Tour, so we're not going to do that tonight. Now, tomorrow, I'll go into some of the specific numbers around Kapalua, but nothing to compare against other courses. So instead, let's just go ahead and jump straight into the early look file. And this is performance at Kapalua the last 5 years. So performance specifically at Kapalua. So you can see Tom Hoagie, he's played once the past 5 years here, finished 3rd. Rory 4th. Tom Kim, but there's Xander. There's Morikawa, Sungjae, Cantley. These players who have played more than once or played it consistently, and the amount of success they've had. So I'm going to remove anybody who's only played Kapalua once in the past 5 years. So that way we can just get a feel for the guys who have played it often and the guys who play it the best. What have they been good at? And see what we want to focus on moving forward this week. So you can see Xander, Morikawa, a lot in the ball striking. Despite the importance of around the green, despite the importance of putting, they've still been ball striking it very well around Kapalua. Same with Sungjae. Now, Cantley has not been as good off the tee. He's making that up in terms of his putting. He's been one of the better putters here at Kapalua. Scheffler actually hasn't been ball striking it well at all, but anyone who pays attention to the PGA Tour, if Scottie Scheffler putts anywhere close to mediocre, he's going to be in contention, and that's what he's done here at Kapalua, gaining 2 strokes per tournament. So, of these players, I guess we'll go down to, we'll just go to the, maybe top 20. This is only 12 players. Again, I'm only looking at players who have played it multiple years. So it's going to be a little bit of a small sample size. I'll give you that. But for players who've played it multiple times, played Kapalua multiple times, and averaged a top 20 or better, you see you have an off the tee of a 0.8. The approach is a 0.4. So surprisingly to me, off the tee is more than the approach. But you have some pretty big numbers in here. 2.3, 2.6, 2.7. It's kind of getting hurt by Spieth here, who has not been good off the tee. He's really dragging this average down. If we remove Spieth from that, it rises to a 0.7, which is pretty on par with off the tee. Around the green, pretty hit and miss. This is a 0.4. If I were to go one above and incorporate or not incorporate this 1.0, it falls to like 0.1. So around the green, just not a big factor here. Putting, 1.3. So that's backing up what we saw in Fantasy National being, at least for the winners, the most important shot type. These are some of the biggest numbers in the strokes gained category. 2.9, a couple of 2.8s, a 2.2. So putting for your winners, and it's been very important to note how poor some of these players have putt and their penchant for not playing well here. We talked about Sam Burns and Hideki the past 5 years. They haven't been putting well, or they haven't played well here. Now, Sam Burns is always a good putter on this surface, but he hasn't done anything else. But look at Hideki, minus 3.4. Victor Hovland, minus 2.6. Keegan, minus 6.5 on these Tiff Eagle Bermuda greens. Now, maybe the aim point is going to help him. Maybe it won't. I generally tend to think about Keegan on bent greens, not Bermuda. So, something to think about there. But you can see the correlation between putting well here and not putting well here in your finishes. All right, moving on. Looking at some driving statistics here. Driving distance is actually a little bit negative, but most players are going to be hitting it about the same amount of distance, with the exception of somebody like Brendan Todd or Mackenzie Hughes, who is notoriously short. But with the amount of rollout, the amount of downhill that you have on the back nine, a lot of players aren't going to be gaining a lot with distance, as opposed to a flat course like Torrey Pines or a notoriously difficult course like Bay Hill. You're not going to gain a whole lot with having a lot of distance here. Again, these fairways, they're very, very easy to hit. So this number, in fact, is negative, or it's right at 0 for fairways gained. These greens are massive, so not a lot to gain here either. I mean, if you're gaining a lot of greens, maybe, but I just don't see a whole lot of value in looking at a whole lot in the driving and greens page view this week, considering the course is so undulated, going up and down the mountain. The greens are are the largest on tour. Fairways are some of the widest on tour. So don't see a whole lot to gain there. Instead, let's take a look at some scoring. Now, there are eagles to be had, as we saw in the course breakdown. There aren't a whole lot. Xander's done pretty well with them. But otherwise, it's just a lot of birdies. A whole lot of birdies. So you take out Seamus Power, who's bringing this average down to a 0.8. You take him out, it goes all the way up to a 1.2. So lots of birdies. But the more consistent, and this is, again, surprising for me, but the more consistent metric in terms of scoring is actually bogey avoidance. You see 0.0 should be yellow. It should be a flat even. It's actually pretty deep in the orange, considering the fact that no player, not a single one, who has played Kapalua multiple times and averaged a top 20 finish or better, not a single player is negative in bogey avoidance. Again, a little bit counterintuitive, I would think, considering this course is very easy, so you got to see who gets a lot of birdies. But there are a few bogeys to be had, so if you're going to avoid them, you're going to be perhaps gaining a few shots on your competition this week. So that was one thing that really, really stood out to me in the research this weekend. Bogey avoidance was the more consistent metric for continued success. And apologies if you can hear that. As I mentioned at the beginning of the show, the idiots around me firing off fireworks. It's like 25 degrees where I'm at. And they're firing off fireworks. I don't know. Anyway, so don't go completely on the easy course, got to get the birdies. While that is true, don't overlook the bogey avoidance. So we might be looking at some bogey avoidance on easy courses, some bogey avoidance on long courses. That might be a factor. We'll take a look at that a little bit more into the data dive tomorrow. All right, let's round this out here. Par 3s, 4s, 5s, and a little bit of proximity. So par 3s, not a whole lot to gain here for players. This is actually a negative 0.1. Again, with only 3 par 3s, it's just not going to contribute a whole lot to your overall success. You see Max Homa's played them well, Harris English has played them well, but it hasn't contributed to a huge amount of success. Now, Harris English did win in 2020, or was it 2021? He's won recently here, but it wasn't because of his par 3 performance. We'll see what it really was here in a little bit. And he's a very good putter on this Tiff Eagle Bermuda, remember. But even so, I mean, he won and then had a pretty bad performance the other time he was here in the past 5 years. So it's not really much into the par 3s. We look at the par 4s now. They started to rise a little bit for the winners in terms of the course breakdown. But you can see it's still not a whole lot here in terms of the amount of players that are positive. You got quite a few players that are negative that are playing Kapalua, fairly well. I'd say this is a 1.6 is a pretty low number. Now a huge number compared to the par 3s when par 3s were negative. So 1.6. If there was a range, it might be the 500 plus. That seems to be the most consistent. But I think it might just be strokes gained par 4. We'll dig into this when we go into the prior leaderboards tomorrow night and dig in the Data Dive show. I want you to really look at the par 5s. That's why I highlighted it before we jumped into Microsoft Excel. You do have a couple of players that are negative in par 5s here at Kapalua, but otherwise, all of these players have had a pretty darn good amount of success at the par 5s. This is a 1.4. If I were to take out, I'll even leave the negative 0.7. If I take out just the massive Tony Finau negative, this number jumps to almost 2. So for whatever reason, Tony Finau has not played the par 5s well here at Kapalua, but it's been pretty darn important for the majority of these players' success. Xander, Sungjae, who's been very good here. Patrick Cantlay, a former winner here at Kapalua. JT Poston has played okay, same as Harris English. He's a former winner and then a pretty poor performance one time as well. So there's a look at what is important among the par 3s, 4s, and 5s. Again, it is mainly in the par 5s. Last thing we're going to look at least in terms of specifics for performance at Kapalua, is proximity. And you've got a few decent numbers here. You got some really, really horrendous numbers as well. This is, in fact, negative thanks to Jordan Spieth, thanks to Seamus. Even Harris English doesn't have very good proximity numbers here. So as much as I would have thought that proximity was a decent factor due to the size of the greens. The course is easy, so you need to be closer to the hole anyway. Doesn't appear to be a major focal point. Now, certainly the players that are consistently good at the proximity have been playing better, but it's not a huge detriment. I mean, look at Tony Finau's averaging a 20th or a 19th place finish. He's been pretty good at the prox total. And just kind of looking across here, I don't see a specific range that would jump off the page either. So perhaps I was mistaken in the sense that proximity would be a big theme. At least based on prior performance at Kapalua, doesn't appear to be. All right. I will bring everybody back into the field this week. Give you a look there, sorted on their average performance. That's going to do it for the initial research show tonight. Thanks to Drew for jumping in chat. Thanks to everyone else out there who tunes in, watches, listens, and supports the channel. I always appreciate it. Love what I do, taking a look at in-depth look at golf statistics and hopefully helping you all win a little bit of money in the process, whether that's through wagers or through DFS. Reminder that we will be back tomorrow for the Data Dive show. I'll also be posting the research that I have done throughout the weekend around prior winners of the Sentry, some Kapalua statistics and all that. So go follow me, or I ask that you follow me on social media if you are wanting to see that. And then lastly, let me know in the comments how you have done with your wagers, whether that's been in fantasy football. Did you play any Grant Thornton or Hero World Challenge golf DFS or wagers? How has that been going for you on that front? How was your Christmas? Did Santa get you everything that you wanted? So would love to hear from the community in that respect. Darnell, thanks for jumping in chat right at the end of the show. Hopefully things have been going well for you. But catching me right at the end of the show. But hopefully we are ready for brand new season of the PGA Tour. Looking forward to it. We're going to start it. I'm appreciative that you remember to drop by. That's, whether you're able to catch live, watch afterwards. I just appreciate that you take the time to check in. So no apologies needed in that regard. Hopefully things have been well with you. I know you kind of do a little bit of fantasy basketball as well. So how's that been going? Thanks again for everyone tuning in. Really appreciate it. For all of the wagers you have made in the past month and a half since I haven't had any shows, for all of the wagers that you're thinking about making until tomorrow night for the Data Dive show, may all your bets be profitable. Happy New Year's, everybody.